On this episode, we discuss the concept of freedom of expression in Thailand and if it fits well within Thai culture.
So, if you've ever wanted advice on what you should or should not say while staying in Thailand, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 with a buddy to check out some beaches, but ended up taking almost a year to finally set foot on a nice patch of sand.
That's not bad by my standards. And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a one-year teaching contract 20 years ago, fell in love with planning incredible trips around Thailand that I never end up actually going on, but I never left.
Well, yeah, I guess if you never go on a trip, you'll never be disappointed by a trip.
That's right. And, you know, I enjoy the planning. I enjoy the dreaming stage.
That's right. That's right. And for what it's worth, the patch of sand that I finally stepped on was in Hua Hin, which is a nice town, but not known for its pristine beaches. So
yeah, not great beaches. A huge thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about the insane new costs for qualifying for a Thai tourist visa, a slick new taxi service that Greg used to get to a cool new market, and the bonkers debate between an ultra-royalist and a pro-democracy protester on Thai TV. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Right on. And okay, before we get into things, I want to give a quick shout out to one of our listeners, our buddy Joe, who sent us a photo of himself standing outside of Four Seasons Landscaping in Philadelphia, which gave us a good chuckle. Thanks for sending that in, man. And everyone, don't forget our meetup. It's on Saturday, November 28th. We're doing a painting workshop first, and then food and drinks at Ban Rim Nam. We've put more details on our Facebook page, so if you want to learn more, check that out. And if you're in town, we hope to see you there. It should be a really fun night, especially if this weather holds, because man, is it nice and cool right now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, true that. All right, well, on this episode, Ed and I were inspired to discuss something based on what's been in the news lately, and that is the concept of freedom of expression in Thailand. Now, obviously, this can be a bit of a sensitive topic as there are certain things you simply should not talk about, so we're going to stay right away from that. But rather, we want to discuss the concept of freedom of expression and how, or even if, it's a suitable thing to have in Thailand, especially considering the rather unique and harsh laws that can be used against those who choose to take Madonna's advice and express themselves.
You're dating yourself there, dude.
What? Madonna's still cool? Come on. So the thing that kicked off this topic was a bizarre story about a guy who posted a negative hotel review online. This was about a month ago now, ran afoul of Thailand's strict defamation laws and went to jail, which led to several weeks of back and forth with the guy finally apologizing to the hotel. However, TripAdvisor seems to have had the last laugh as they placed a warning on the hotel's page on its website that says, "This hotel or individuals associated with this hotel filed criminal charges against TripAdvisor user in relation to the traveler writing and posting online reviews. The reviewer spent time in jail as a result," etc., etc. So this is kind of a weird case, Ed, but I think it speaks to kind of like the overall bigger issue of something that Evo and I talked about in season 2 of the podcast, which is self-censorship and the concept of free and open self-expression and the Western concept of freedom of expression, which doesn't really dovetail 100% with the Thai concept of freedom of expression. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think this is just a fascinating topic. It's got so many layers to it. It's got like legal issues, but it's obviously cultural. And I think this does fit into one of those things, maybe just like democracy in general, where if you ask Thai people directly, do you believe in freedom of speech? I think almost all of them will say yes.
Right.
So it's like, it's not just like democracy. Yes, we believe in it. But then when you get down into the nitty gritty, what they mean by freedom of speech is not really what we normally take it to be, I think, in the West, which is something that's almost kind of unfettered. So first, before we get into the larger issue, I want to talk about this case because I think it's kind of fascinating, and I gotta hand it to TripAdvisor here for being fairly clever. So basically, what happened is this guy went to a resort, and we're not gonna name anything specifically. He went to a resort. I think he was pissed off because like the corkage fee was too high, and he got into some kind of argument with the staff, and it got a little bit ugly. And subsequently, he posted a bunch of pretty extreme reviews. So we got to be clear. He didn't just post like, had bad service. He did kind of go a little bit crazy. And
he had a bit of a vendetta. Yeah.
So he posted a bunch of really bad reviews. And I think the hotel contacted him and asked him to take him down. And he told him to forget about it. And so that resort went to the police. And so this is where I'm going to give a little bit of an explanation of Thai defamation law. So Thailand has civil defamation, which is a little bit more like defamation in the West, where it's just persons versus person. And if what someone says is proven to be true, then it's like a defense, which is how I think of defamation. But Thailand also has criminal defamation, which is a little bit different. And the way it works roughly, as far as I can tell, is even if you prove your statement true, if it's not something in the public interest, which apparently has been narrowly defined, then you can still potentially go to jail and pay a big fine. In other words, it's almost like Thailand's laws have kind of a mind your own business aspect to it, where even if what you're saying is true, so let's say what this guy said in his comments online were actually factually correct. That's not good enough defense in criminal defamation, because the court can decide, well, he was trying to damage this resort, and what he said is not in the public interest. So I'm not even sure what in the public interest means, but from what I could tell from my research it's been pretty narrowly defined, because even human rights people who are trying to uncover stuff like near slave labor, these companies have successfully sued them, and the courts have said, well, this is not in the public interest. Like, it's like a private matter.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, even when human rights are involved, it's like they've said it's a private matter.
Well, so let me put this in filthy terms that I can understand. So say, for instance, you come out and say, Greg has relations with farm animals. In a civil suit, I could say that's outrageous. And you could say, well, here's some photos. And the judge would say, okay, well, there you go. That's proof. So case closed.
Yeah. So when it's like me versus you, I think truth is a defense.
Right. But in a criminal case, you could say Greg has relations with farm animals, and I could say that's ridiculous. And you could say, well, I have photos. And the judge would say, it doesn't matter if it's true or not. You still damaged his reputation by making that accusation public.
That's right. That's right. And there was and I guess apparently it's kind of like, the public doesn't gain anything by knowing that. Like, it's not in the public interest. Like, this was a private matter. This was Greg's personal life. Okay.
For what it's worth, I have never, nor do I have, nor will I ever have relations with farm animals.
Yeah. So it's kind of like if you violate a person or even a company, if you kind of violate their privacy, and if you're seen as kind of, it's almost like, in a way, this does kind of fit with Thai culture. If they think you're kind of being mean, if they think you're being insulting or derogatory, then that's like a factor in it doesn't matter if it's true. If they're just like, well, you were really harsh about it. Like, your language was really harsh and insulting. So then you can be found guilty.
Well, this is interesting because it also dovetails nicely with your theory about how Thais are very conservative publicly, but privately they're very liberal. So the outward face is like, it's none of your business what goes on. Just mind your business and keep everything to yourself.
Yeah, there was a human rights activist who went to jail because in a tweet she said that a company was engaging in slave labor, and the court said that that was like an exaggeration. That was like an insult because the people were not actually slaves. So they're like, you exaggerated, you went overboard. Like even though, this is really something that should be kind of a matter of opinion. And the people were like effectively slaves, even though they weren't actually literally slaves.
I mean, how do you, what are they chained to the floor to be slaves? Like,
right. And so what happened in this recent hotel case, again, I got to hand it to TripAdvisor. I think they were very clever about this. So it ends up going to, the resort goes to the police. The police arrest the guy who wrote the reviews, and he only spent 2 days in jail. I mean, that's still a long time, but so he spent 2 days in jail, and then he began negotiating with them. And TripAdvisor got involved, and apparently TripAdvisor said, "We'll pay your legal fees," which I thought was really cool of them, because TripAdvisor obviously wants their patrons to feel free to say what they want and be honest.
That's their entire business model, right?
Right, that's their business model. So they agreed to pay his legal fees, and apparently TripAdvisor's lawyers got involved in a negotiation with the resort. And from what I can tell, what happened is the resort said, well, if the guy takes down the offensive reviews, if he apologizes, and if TripAdvisor agrees not to give us this harsh label. TripAdvisor has some kind of like red flag where they're almost telling people don't go here.
Right.
And so the resort negotiated with TripAdvisor's lawyers that they not get like the red card. And TripAdvisor said, fine. Okay. So based on this, they dropped the charges. The guy got out and he left Thailand. And then what TripAdvisor did is they didn't totally break the promise. They didn't give the resort the red flag, but they did create a new
like a special flag.
So they flagged this place and said this resort prosecuted a guy for a bad review. And so now the resort is pissed because they're like, hey, you broke your promise. And TripAdvisor's like, no, we didn't. We didn't give you the red flag. We made a new thing.
Oh, those sneaky bastard lawyers.
Yeah, but I think, TripAdvisor kind of did. I think TripAdvisor handled this really well because I got to give them, because they basically stood by this guy, and he's just a guy who used TripAdvisor. I mean, it's not like he's a TripAdvisor employee. He's just a random tourist in Thailand, right. and they stuck by him, And I don't really know anything about TripAdvisor. I think I've written one TripAdvisor review in my life, although I've read, quite a few. This led me to do a little more research, and the troubling thing about Thai laws is a lot of them are written pretty vaguely. So check this out. The Computer Crimes Act, it makes it a crime to upload distorted information to the internet. Distorted information. I mean, what in God's name does that mean?
That is pretty that's entirely subjective.
Right. I mean, who decides what distorted information is?
Right.
And then on top of that, there are anti-sedition laws, which they use against like democracy activists and stuff like that. But even in the anti-sedition laws, it says if you criticize or if you insult a court verdict, that violates the anti-sedition law. So it's like you're trying to overthrow the government if you criticize the court, if you criticize a court ruling.
Man, that's just got Thailand written all over it. Like, how dare you go against the authority? Like, how dare you speak out against the ruling that's come down?
Well, here's the question, the question is, can Thailand somehow balance, like, can they kind of be a modern country, but still maintain this attitude that you can't, even if you're being honest, you can't criticize like powerful institutions. Like how can they have like democracy without freedom of expression? I mean, I just don't see how you get one without the other.
I think they might sort of come to a compromise eventually, which I guess they have already, but they have what they call it's Thai democracy, the Thai version of democracy, which right. may or may not be a bullcrap thing, depending on how much you want to buy into it. But, it's like when the people say, you can say anything you want in Thailand. Thailand has full freedom of expression. You just can't say this thing over here.
Right.
You're like,
right. Well,
okay,
right, that's what I'm saying. It's like if you ask Thai people, they will say they believe in freedom of speech, but then they have all these laws. So I wonder if the younger generation has a different attitude. Like, so maybe the young generation believes in true freedom of speech, what you and I would think is freedom of speech. Mm-hmm. I wonder.
But what you and I think of freedom of speech does not reconcile with traditional Thai culture. And it's when an immovable object meets an irresistible, what is it? An irresistible force meets an immovable object?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Something's got to give.
Yeah. In general, I feel like I don't censor myself that much. But in fact, I probably do a little bit. So on this show, you and I do criticize the government, and we do sometimes criticize companies. But I think we do tone it down a little bit, and we often don't name, like the company. Whereas I think if I was in the States and we were doing this podcast, I would say like, I got really shitty service at this place. I wouldn't have a problem saying that. But I think you and I we do censor ourselves like a little bit. I mean, I don't think we do it. The bottom line is if there was total political freedom of speech, I could go off a lot more than I do. So that's
same,
true.
man. I've got opinions. But I mean, I've said it before on the show. I can't tell you how many times I've written a tweet and read it 15 times and then just deleted it and gone like, no one needs to know this, or no one. This is just this, and it all comes down to like the potential upside of this thing is far outweighed by the potential downside. So the math doesn't work out. There's no reason. There's no point in doing it. And it sucks. But
the protesters are crossing lines. Like the protesters are saying and doing stuff that older Thais think is really rude and inappropriate.
Yes. Yeah. Well, they're Thai, they're young, and they've, it's funny. I was thinking the other day, that like a lot of the older Thais and the ultra royalists and stuff are saying that obviously an outside influence is guiding these protesters. It must be a third hand, an invisible hand, a hidden hand or something like that. And I think that phrasing might be correct, just the actuality of it might not be correct. I think the third hand that they're worried about is an international education or exposure to international news and norms and cultures that do not gel with Thai culture. That might be the third hand that they're worried about. Yeah. They think it's like a literal guy sitting, in a high-backed chair stroking a cat on his lap. But actually, it's an idea.
Yeah, I think you're right. But the bottom line is, if young Thai people want free speech that meets international standards, then that is Thai culture. Culture changes all the time. Culture is this evolving thing. It's not something fixed. And as you pointed out, old people just often don't get it, and they're not willing to change. Like the United States has changed many, many different times over the years. They are evolving. So maybe this is just like, why does Thailand have to stay static when other countries can evolve? Culture
is like language. It's always shifting and evolving. And
yeah. And I'm not sure if I just don't see how, this kind of goes back to what we said in our education show. Like, I don't see how Thailand becomes a true first world country like they want to be without having education that is closer to a Western style, where students are not harshly punished, where students are not taught to be so obedient, and where students aren't allowed to express opinions in class.
Right.
I think the younger generation, they're the ones who are going to have to push this. Like, because if people just have to just always be polite, it's like you can't have a free country. You can't have democracy.
Right. I agree with that. But let me play devil's advocate for a second here. This is a perfect example of how we have to be really wary about seeing other cultures, in this case, Thai culture, through the Western lens. And I think it's inappropriate and possibly dangerous in this case to steam into Thailand and look at things like prostitution or freedom of expression or, respect for the elderly or the influence of powerful people, to expect those things to match up perfectly with our interpretation of how those things work back home, because they don't work the same here. And if you expect them to, or want them to, and try to force them to, as a foreigner, you're probably going to end up with a headache.
No, I mean, I agree with all of that, except that we also should not think that everything we see through the Western lens is wrong. I don't think that's true, because I think that when you ask young Thai people what do they think, I think they would actually agree with a lot of things that we have to say. And so it's like I would never try to push something on Thai people that they themselves don't want. But if they want it, then I'm not going to say, hey, they don't deserve it because like, because for hundreds of years, Thailand has never had this before. That's ridiculous. Thailand has the right to change. They have a right to evolve just like any other country does.
Totally.
You know?
But you can't come in here and like expect
No,
things to work the way that you expect them to
obviously,
work.
sure. And, I guess we're kind of wrapping up a little bit, but we did mean this episode to be a little bit of a warning. We don't want to freak you guys out, but it is a warning that you should be careful what you say online about Thai businesses. So even though in this case, the guy made it out of Thailand, he had the help of TripAdvisor and like he did have to spend 2 days in jail. So the bottom line is it probably is not a good idea to go on a crazy rant like on TripAdvisor or if you're writing a Google review. Like I think you can still, this. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of an advice a buddy of mine gave me years ago because he had he was running a small business and he had some Thai employees.
Yeah.
And I was asking him what it was like to have Thai employees. And he said, you can say anything you want to a Thai person as long as you're smiling and polite. And what he was, what he was saying is like, you can tell someone they're lazy, they're dumb, they're shitty at their job, as long as you're kind of nice about it. Like, as long as you're like smiling, it's like, it's really how you say it that matters. And even in the laws, you can see in the laws, like the law about criticizing the court says you can't say something with rude, sarcastic, or malicious intent.
Whoa, man, how do you prove sarcasm? That's because it's
right.
so...
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, but I mean, it's like they seem to care a lot about how you say something, And so I think you can still write negative reviews about Thai hotels and stuff like that. But in this case, this guy was actually really insulting.
But he had an axe to grind, right? Like,
yeah, right. So I would just say to our listeners, if you get bad service, I think you can feel safe writing a negative review. But I think the tone does matter. And if you get pissed and you are really rude, the resort, they might go to the police. The hotel could go to the police.
It's like anything when you get in an argument with your wife or someone, sleep on it, take a deep breath, count to 10, whatever you need to do, and reassess, because this is just another sort of example of how Thailand does not work like a lot of Westerners expect things to work. And it's a good lesson. But yeah, you're right. You need to measure yourself, measure not only what you say, but how you say it, which is very important here.
Yeah, I think so.
Be nice. Don't be a jerk.
That's right. That's right.
Our new motto. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something that we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. This week, Edward, it is your turn.
All right, Mr. Greg, I got a very general question for you, and it might seem weird given the nature of our show, but I think it's an honest question. I was talking to a buddy of mine here who at that point, I think he was living here about 5 years, and he was getting ready to leave.
Okay.
And I was like, what's up? I was like, what's up, dude? What's wrong? He's like, well, as a foreigner in Thailand, the number one thing I hate about Thailand is all the other foreigners here. So he was kind of like a Farang who just didn't like the Farangs he met here, like the other expats. He just didn't get along with them or didn't make enough connections. And it's one of the reasons why he left. Now, the irony in this case is he left and he subsequently came back. So he must have got over it. But I've heard this before. This is not a rare thing for foreigners to say, like, I love Thai people, but damn, like,
right.
The foreigners here.
Jerks.
And I just want, like, in general, is that how you feel towards us expats?
This is an interesting one. No, I don't feel like that. Okay. Actually, I think the vast diversity of people here, expats and Thais alike, is one of the biggest positives of living in Bangkok. Because there are weirdos and freaks and idiots, but they just spice things up. They keep it spicy. They keep it saucy.
Okay. I mean, it makes sense because you and I are doing this podcast that you would agree. I've never really understood this attitude. I get that there are assholes here. There are jerks. There's like drunken sexpats. There are idiot foreigners here.
Right.
But the bottom line is I don't have to interact with them. Like
Yeah.
it is annoying when I hear about them, or if I read a story about them and I'm like, God, they're giving us a bad name.
Yeah.
But in general, like you said, that like I think in general the expat population is pretty interesting and different. Like there's all kinds of people here, like
Right.
from other countries, you know.
Totally.
And I just even now after 20 years, like last week I met an expat woman from Italy and had a great conversation with her, and it was just interesting. You know, it was just like, wow, she was doing something totally different in here that I've never met someone doing what she's doing, and it was just cool and different. And I don't know, like I don't like this. I understand that like some Thai people don't like farongs for whatever reason, maybe whatever, for whatever their reasons are. But I've never really understood the anti-farong attitude among farongs.
No, I don't get it. And I think I think without knowing anything about this guy that he probably just didn't appreciate being out of his comfort zone. Maybe it was too far away from his comfort zone.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, the bottom line is when you're new in a place, it can certainly be hard to make friends or make connections.
Yeah.
But even if you meet a jerk and have like kind of a bad experience with a farong here, that shouldn't affect your opinion towards all of us, man.
No, that's a pretty stupid way to look at it. Like you said, we've all met really creeps and weirdos that we don't want to have anything more to do with, and it's easy to not have anything more to do with them. You just don't hang out with them anymore.
Yeah, that's why I see it. So in general, I'm kind of like, it's a little bit weird for me to say like I love the farongs in Thailand. I mean, that might be a little bit strong. So I guess maybe I would go live with. But I mean, the bottom line is I've actually just never understood this attitude. I think there's just a lot of great expats here, and I've met a lot of great people. I mean, you being one of them, but obviously a lot of other people.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I
No,
don't get it.
I don't get it either. I would say I love the expats here. All the dysfunctionality and weirdness and unpredictability of it.
Right.
It's part of the barely controlled chaos that expats in Thailand thrive on. I think that you need to thrive on to make a long-term go of it here. So I love it. I love the weird dysfunctional family that we belong to.
Yeah. Now, drunken sexpats, I'm not so into those guys. But other than that, I'm a big fan of the expat population.
Yeah. Same.
All right. Okay. A final thanks to our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Right on. You can also listen to each episode on the YouTube, so you can chat with us on the lines, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter or Instagram, where I am BKK Greg. So thanks for listening, folks. Take care of yourself, and we'll see you back here next week.
Absolutely.